Hi, welcome back to class. And this week we are going to look at groups and formal organizations. And we're going to use a case actually of a sociologist doing research, doing field research. And we're going to use that as a basis for our discussion and for our week. I'm also going to introduce you guys to the concept of our paper that we're going to write for the class, and then we're going to incrementally work on this paper. So I do have it broken down into parts that you can have for your base, and that way it's a fairly easy paper to write, and I think will be pretty enjoyable for you. I've done this starting a couple of years ago in this very class, and some of the students really had a good time with it, and they're able to actually take the information and use it for getting a better understanding of themselves. So I'll go through the assignment sheet with you. This week we're going to look at social groups and formal organizations. So we're going to look at the work of Sudhir Venkatek, who is a sociologist who now works at Columbia University, and he studied a street gang while he was a he was a PhD student. And so in doing this, he immersed himself in the gang in Chicago. And it's a kind of a humorous story because he wasn't familiar with that lifestyle. So he moved to Chicago from Orange County, California, and he was from a wealthy neighborhood actually. And he didn't have exposure to the people that he would have met in Chicago. And so as he immersed himself in the gang, he also immersed himself in the community. And so as you look into how he studied, he actually went very wide, and he not only discusses the gang, but he discusses the social structure of the housing project that the gang resided in. And so he got a very big picture. He also does what a lot of sociologists do, and he explained the larger political pulls on the community. So the strains from various policies dating back to past presidents and to the city of Chicago itself. And so he goes pretty wide, and this is a big thing that sociologists do. They try to explain what's going on and give a more complete picture. So they'll explain the social history of what we're getting at with the situation. So what you're going to do is you're going to start responding to the Chapter 3 discussion threads. And one thing I want to point out to you, I was just looking at the last discussion, so I have a slightly different view of this than you guys have. But I do want to point out a tip that I think will make this class a lot easier for you. We're going to go to this current discussion here. And what a lot of you are doing is you're just posting responses to the initial post, which you can go ahead and do that. But what I'd rather you do is when someone posts a response to maybe your post, that you respond back to them. That's considered a response. And so here we have an example of students doing this. They're working their way down, so they're responding to each other. This is more like a real discussion, and it'll make the class more enjoyable. Again, we see this again here. We have students responding to each other or to other students. So if you go ahead and do that, it will make it a lot easier. So one of the drawbacks, I think, to setting up a class online is I don't always get to be very clear on what I expect. And I know I did say a response to an initial post, but that response can also be a response to a response, or a response to someone else's response's response. So just, you can keep working there and have an actual discussion. I know it's sometimes a little difficult to do at the beginning, but you should start getting more comfortable with each other and doing this. So it will make it a lot easier. You're logging on 3 different days, and in theory, hopefully everyone is looking on their sites and they're able to respond to each other. But I think this will make it easier for you, and hopefully this should be fun. I want the discussions to be fun. So again, start responding to the chapter 3 discussion. Again, there's two different threads, so each thread requires 3 separate responses. I'm looking for at least 6 for this week. You're going to read chapter 4 of the text. You're going to watch Stephen Levitt and the Q&A with Sudhir Venkatek. So this video, it's about an hour and a half between the 2 videos, maybe an hour and 15 minutes. The question and answer, I'll tell you up front, the person asking the questions is pretty dry, but they show some videos, and so you get to actually see the people that Sudhir used for his case. There's a Dropbox 4 assignment that is due, and that is about the Q&A. So it's looking at the questions and answers with the sociologist himself. And then make sure, even though this is just about the Q&A, I want you to also watch the Stephen Levitt video, because you're going to need his video to do the chapter 4 discussion. So Stephen Levitt actually is an economist, but he did some work of Sudhir, and they wrote some stuff for Freakonomics, and he discusses some of the funnier points of Sudhir, of what he did. So you're going to post 2 initial posts to this. I think everybody has this idea now. Don't start responding to these posts until next week, so I'll tell you when to do that. And again, the reason we're doing it this way is so you guys can have these discussions piggyback on each other. I actually took this idea from my friend who teaches at Kent State, and he actually found that it builds a much better a sense of community in the class. I have a crash course on sociology, so this is looking at our formal organizations, and then you're going to complete the knowledge review, quiz number 4. And now I have instructions for the paper up, and we're going to work on a Dropbox for the paper. So this Dropbox is going to be its incremental part of the paper. So we're going to discuss the first 4 chapters a little bit in this first paper you do, and that way as you do a couple of these, when it comes time to put your paper together, you have basically a rough draft that you may not have to expand too much on to actually have a whole paper. And the reason you're doing this is because it's easier to do it while it's fresh in your head than as you move on throughout the semester. So we're going to use the term the sociological imagination from our first week, looking at Mills, and he defined the sociological imagination as the intersection of history and biography. So in sociology, we try to avoid discussing our own biography in general. However, I want you to do that in this class. Your social settings and the social world around you helped make you who you are. And I think if you're taking a class, you might as well get a better understanding of yourself. That's a major point of college, and especially if you're getting a liberal education like we're getting here, where we're getting exposure to numerous different ideas and backgrounds to look at to make you a more complete person. Take this information and have a better understanding of yourself. So this is going to be a very short paper. We're just looking for 6 pages. And so you're going to have a minimum of 5 complete pages typed, plus a works cited page. And when I say a minimum of 5 pages, if you do 4 pages and 3 sentences, that's not 5 pages, and I will deduct your grade for it. 5 pages is a very short paper, so I'm not asking for very much. You're going to write this in APA guidelines. Do your best. I know some of you have never actually done this before for APA. It has to be original work. Need a works cited page. I want 25 citations. That sounds like a lot, but if you use your textbook as a basis for your paper, you should easily have 25 points that you hit on from the text. You're welcome to use other sources as well. And I have some information on what we expect from a paper. And the truth is, in this class, for a paper like this, there's no reason that everybody shouldn't get an A on it, especially if we do the incremental work on it. So if you do all these little assignments that are due along the way, there'll be 3 or 4 of them. There's no reason why you shouldn't have, again, a good foundation for a paper so you can have a well-written paper. And this will not be difficult at all. So what you're going to use is, use a sociological lens to write a 1 to 1.5 page paper on the first 4 chapters of the text. Go ahead and separate these. So chapter 1, make that as a heading or something, and write a couple of paragraphs. Chapter 2, 3, 4. Going over the parts of the text that will that explain you. So if you're going through the book and maybe you're in this last chapter and we get to formal organizations and you work in some establishment, let's say if you work in a fast food restaurant, go ahead and discuss that. That's part of who you are. Maybe you were in the military. That's a very formal organization. You can use that as a section. Maybe you had exposure to a street gang. Again, another organization. That's not really a formal organization, but that's still something we're covering in this text. But we're parts of all kinds of groups, and every chapter has things I'm sure that you've read that hit back on who you are. So I just want you to go ahead and hit on those a little bit while you're writing this. Again, this should be a fun assignment. I don't want it to be difficult, but I want you to walk away from the class having a clear understanding of what sociology is. And in my opinion, this is probably one of the best ways to do it. Using sociology to explain who you are to the world. It's called a sociological biography. And again, they're quite fun to do. So if you have any questions, go ahead and feel free to email me. And if not, go ahead and work through the week and have a great week. Thank you.